Please welcome Christoph Rumpel.
All right. Testing is a lot of things. It's fun, it's challenging, it's exciting, but above all of this, testing is a journey. And I still remember pretty well 10 years ago when I started my testing journey. I officially feel old writing this, but yeah, it was super hard getting into testing. All the resources back then were pretty hard. It was unit test only, no hitting the database. But besides that, what do I test, where, when, and especially why do I write tests? Back then I wanted to write tests because all the good developers that I looked up to, probably sitting somewhere over there, they were saying write tests because you're a better developer when doing this. And I tried to do this. And I think it's not the best reason to get started with tests, but I also say any reason to get started with tests is a good reason. So it took me quite a long time to really understand testing, knew when I would use it, integrate it into my workflow, and I really would say it took me years to really understand it and enjoy writing tests, which I now say I really enjoy writing tests today, which is, for me personally, really good because testing has become a passion for myself, and it's really something that I like to do, and I'm really glad that I took this road. And I think also what happened over the last years is that testing resources has become way better than before. So today, if I want to teach anyone new to testing a test, I would let them write this test here. And I'm pretty sure how many of you have written this test before in your application? Okay, not enough yet. When you go home or in a break, find one project, add this test, and please send me a screenshot. I really want to see this, because this is a test that every application benefits from, and it's also more important, it's a test that everybody understands. If you're new to testing, this is something that you can explain to anyone, and most importantly, they would understand why this is important, because you really want to make sure that your homepage returns a successful response code. And I also would say that Laravel has a big impact on bringing more people to testing with all the resources and tools that support it now. And yeah, we heard about from Luke already facades. I love facades. I really do. I'm happy to share this. And facades testing is really amazing. I love how easy this is to read. I've been using mail in my controller, for example, or somewhere else, and now I'm faking the mail system, and then I can run some assertions on it. And this is just beautiful, and it's very easy to understand, it's easy to maintain, and yeah, something that I do a lot. Also, 10 years ago, nobody would have taught you to write tests against a database, which I think is, maybe especially when you start, not a good thing not to do, because this is a test that is very close to how my application works. And this is also a test that I easily understand. I'm running an artisan command, and then I'm making sure that I see something in my database. So I immediately see what's going on there and why this is beneficial to me. And I really think you should start with writing tests that help you feel better about your code and feel more confident about your code. Bless you. So I really think that Laravel had a big impact here, which I also think is super important. Over the years, I also become better at testing. I also started teaching about testing. I have this free video course about how to get started with TDD in PHP, test-driven development, which I do a lot. And I also have this course, which is now on Laracast, about Pest. By the way, Nuno Maduro, we miss you here. I think all of you are big fans of Pest. I'm too. And I have a video course about using TDD and Pest as well. So, over the years, mostly the projects that I worked on were similar to this, which is my online platform where I make all the sales for my courses and where everybody is going if you want to watch any of my videos. So it's not a big application, but it's a very important one to me. That's why I, of course, wrote tests for this. And then when we are running this now together, which doesn't take too long, we're going to start the test suite by running PHP artisan test. And we have here around 150 tests. It's not super huge, but it's also nothing, so important tests for myself. This took 5 seconds to run, and if I'm running this with parallel testing, this is just 1.5 seconds. So we're at a point with testing where testing has become really fast. I would also say that a couple of hundred tests are always fast. No matter how much you try to screw up your test, the test suite will still be pretty fast. And I would also go that far saying if you have an application that is maybe not that database heavy, your test suite can have 1,000 or 2,000 tests and still mostly will be fast. But yeah, at some point you come maybe to an application where this looks a little bit different. And this is also what my talk today is about, a test suite that has over 5,000 tests and how we tried to make this faster. By the way, my name is Christoph Rumpel. I'm an educator at Laravel, but I also work at a company called Blue Ocean Ideas, and we have this project called Sail AMX. It's an all-in-one enterprise management platform for associations. Also a very famous Belgian company that you might know, who have created a lot of packages, helped building this up over the last years. And this project is by far the biggest project that I ever worked on. And it's by far the biggest project, Laravel PHP-wise, that I have ever seen. So this was quite different to many of the other projects that I worked on before. We have 5,370 tests. We have 20,869 assertions. When you think about this, this is crazy. This number is just so huge. And we also have a test suite that takes 50 minutes to run locally, which you can imagine is maybe not so good. But let's start with the positive side here. We do have tests. We have lots of tests, enough tests for all of you. If you want to take some away, I can give you some tests. We have enough of them. And also what's good here is that having so many tests helped us to grow this application really fast. So this is just a couple of years old, this application, years old. So you can see having those tests helped us to grow it really fast, which is really important. And there's a negative side to a test suite that takes 50 minutes. Yeah, surprise. So one thing is that we just can't run it locally. It just takes too long. You don't want to wait 50 minutes. Your boss don't want you to wait 50 minutes. You don't want to run this and do something else instead because, it's just not very convenient. So this means, what did we do? At the beginning, everything was working fine, and the more slowly it got, we heavily relied on GitHub Actions. We split up the whole test suite in 8 different chunks that run at the same time on GitHub Action. It's not like parallel testing, but it still could speed up the test suite to be like 20 minutes on GitHub Actions. So this means locally we would work just on the tests that we currently work on, and then we would just check with our PR if everything else is working as well. This was working for us. It could be improved, but we've been doing this for quite some time. And then also something which is, just normally, if your test suite is already slow, the next 2 tests that you're going to write and add to this test suite, you probably don't think too much as making them as fast as possible because it is already slow. So, good question is, why did we end up at this situation? What did we do wrong? Did we had crappy developers? I would say no, I'm one of them, so that's definitely not the case. Also, Spasi has helped a lot with amazing people, and also the team there at this company, all smart developers. So this is not the case. What else? Did we had a bad testing setup? So this is kind of the biggest bottleneck with testing, but in our case, this was not the issue. I will tell you why in just a minute. So I think the only kind of issue that we had is that we just grew really fast, which is just also part of the journey. You're implementing solutions that work for today and maybe the near future, but you don't plan anything for what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years because this is just not very helpful. So this means for us, performance has become a journey as well. And this journey started quite some time ago. And it started with 50-minute test suite. So where do you start when you have such a big test suite, and where do you start looking for improvements? So you have to know that the performance of your whole test suite is built up by the setup of your tests, how they are going to run, when, stuff like that. And then you have the single tests here, where you have to define how performant is the code that you write inside your tests. So setup, when we talk about the setup, we're talking about database, we're talking about migration, and also CDAS. So this is what builds up the setup. On the database side of things, you can just pick any database that you can use in Laravel. And you can use something that is the same as in production, or maybe you can use something like SQLite, which is a file or in-memory database, which of course is way faster. Then very important, on the migration side, you have basically two options. First, you can use refresh database, lazily refresh database, just meaning you are migrating your database with every test. And then on the other side, you can use database transactions. So no migrations are run at all, and all the things that you do inside your tests are being rerouted at the end of the test. So with our setup, oh, and then you have seeders. You can decide, do you have seeders, do you use them or not, and how heavy are they? Our setup looked like this. We were using MySQL for testing because it was the same that we were using in production. And for big application, it makes sense to do this because you are more closer to your real application and how it works in production. And you mostly will find easier bugs which are related to the database. On the migration side, we were using database transactions. So we were not running any migrations during our tests. And on the seeders, we have a multi-tenancy application, so there's a bunch of stuff that we need to set up before we can even run our test suite, but it wasn't really much, and just some specific data for testing. So since I told you we were not running migrations inside our test, when and how are we going to run this? We have this artisan command here, which we call test prepare, and this just does a bunch of things for us. We are setting a couple of configurations, variables in the regression for the database. We are running the landlord migrations. We are running the tenant migrations. And we were running our playbooks, which is just another term for seeders. So the good thing here is that we're splitting up our test suite and we're running the migration with a different artisan command, which means in the test suite, which takes 50 minutes, no migrations are being run, which means we already somehow dealt with an issue. But bad for this talk and for our journey is that we already dealt with the biggest bottleneck in testing performance because we weren't running any migrations. And in this application, we have 660 migrations. So you can imagine this takes quite some time, but this is not part of the 50 minutes. Damn it. OK, so the next logical step was to take a look at the single tests. And when you have 5,000 tests, where do you even start taking a look at single tests here? So what I found really useful was PEST. And using the profile feature of PEST, which is amazing. You can run it against a single test file, against a directory, or the whole test suite, and then we'll show you the 10 slowest tests. And this is how I found a lot of tests which were pretty slow. And lucky for you, I got some nice examples. So here's a test. 14 tests in this file, takes 50 seconds to run. OK, what was going on here? I could improve this to 23 seconds. So what did I do? It was quite interesting because the issue was related to the setup method of our test. So in general, if you have a test class like this, you have maybe 2 methods for testing, and then you need to provide some data. And here we're going to provide the same data for both of those tests here, which often is the case. So we were logging in a user, we're creating a user, logging it in, and then we have some invoices in the database. And we needed the same arranged setup for both of those tests. So of course, we are smart. We want our code to be readable, to be looking good. So we don't want duplicated code, so we use a setup method. Put all the stuff into the setup method, which is being run now for all tests in this class, which is pretty cool. But yeah, sometimes a setup method looks like this here. So I got this example from this test here. And you can see here, there is a lot going on here in this setup method. And we have an event-based application, so we have a ton of stuff going on inside the database. So the issue now in our case was there was a lot of stuff suddenly in our setup method that was not used for every single test in this file. And this is why this test has become so slow. So the fix was quite easy. I just took the parts that were not used by all the tests and put them into the single test, and suddenly this test was 20 seconds faster than before. So this was really interesting to me because I was a big fan of the setup method. I'm a big fan of making your code readable, get rid of duplicated code and things like that. But yeah, this showed me that especially in big application, the setup method can be a really big issue, especially with a bigger team. Maybe the first time you write this class, everything is good. You only put the stuff into the setup method that is being used by all methods. But maybe someone else comes in, sees there's already stuff in the setup method. I put my stuff in there. And yeah, 1 or 2 years later, maybe this is super slow, and you don't really realize it until you really try to take a look what's going on here. I had a couple of tests with the similar issue. Here was one 21 test taking 40 seconds. After taking a look at the setup method, it was just 10 seconds. And it's really crazy how much time you can save if you make this, when you try to improve this, especially with a very database-heavy application. And then this test here, which was quite interesting. So 6 passing tests taking 30 seconds. On the right, you can see every single test was super slow. 4 seconds, 5 seconds, even 7 seconds. So, okay, what the hell was going on here? And what we found, or what I found, was this method here, is Steph. It's a method on our user factory. So whenever we want to create a user for testing, which has all the permissions and the specific role, we were using this method. And I'm pretty sure at the beginning, when we wrote this, this was super fast. But after 3 years, this took 2 seconds to run, just this method, just to create a kind of admin super user. So this is something that you don't find if you specifically look for stuff like that, because yeah, this at the beginning it works fine. So even if you write new tests, you check the performance, all is good, but after a year or 2 years, suddenly this is not working as expected anymore. So we could fix this quite easily. We were bringing down all tests per 2 or 3 seconds, but still they were pretty slow. So what did I do? What do you think? Any guesses? I took a look at, yes, setup method, and I could improve every single test again with around 2 seconds, and now we were at 6 passing tests, 7 seconds, which is not super fast, but way faster than before. So this was really interesting, seeing what were the issues here and how we could solve them. And after a lot of work, taking a look at all those different tests here, yeah, I could improve it to 45 minutes. I mean, 5 minutes is a lot, but 45 minutes is even bigger and more. So yeah, you still don't want to wait 45 minutes to run everything. So yeah, this really sucked. We were looking at the setup method, at the setup process. We were looking at single tests. Of course, I don't get the permission to take a look at every of those 5,000 tests. Maybe then we could even improve this, but yeah, we needed to look for something else. We needed to look for holy grail of testing performance. What do you think is it? Yes, parallel testing. Parallel testing to the rescue. Parallel testing is these days pretty easy to use with Paratest for PHP unit. It's included in Pest already. As you've seen with my online platform where I showed you, just add -p, it runs parallel, all good, all fine. 1.5 second test suite, all good. But sometimes it depends. And of course, in our case, this was the case. So sometimes parallel testing also becomes a journey. And it really was a journey for us because our CTO, Luke, by the way, thank you, Luke, for letting me do this talk about this project. Amazing guy. 1.5 years ago, he created this PR saying it's been frustrating that the test suite takes 15 minutes back then. With parallel testing, we could be down to like 3 minutes. Draft PR, 44 commits, 50 files change, still draft PR. So yeah, what was going on? Why was parallel testing not so easy for us to use? Why did we have to go the extra mile? So yeah, when we ran the test suite after having this draft PR, 50 files changed, something 50 commits, we still had 122 failing tests. And this is now pretty sad because we have to take a look at all of them. And the funny thing with parallel testing is that now the tests run at the same time next to each other. And you run into very weird issues where you see your test failing for a specific reason, and you have no idea why this is the case. And we had to take a look at every one of them. So what did we find? We found a lot of easy fixes. So we found a lot of tests where we were referring to the sale tenant, which is our tenant, the first one in this example on the left here, or we were trying to get a specific tenant with the ID of 1, because before that we only had 1 in the database, but now we were dealing with different ones. So now we had to be very clear every time we were looking for a tenant or when we did something other in the database that we were looking for really specific data. And we had like 30 or 40 tests that we could easily change like this. But what we also found is that we were using temporary folders quite a lot in the application. You can see on the right, we are creating one, and we are providing also a path where we want this temporary folder to be. Again, no issue if one test is running and then the next test is running, but now they're running at the same time. They're trying to do stuff with this folder at the same time, and now you run into issues. Also easy fix here, just get rid of the path. It turns out this automatically creates a random folder, which of course is way better. But most of the issues which we had were about caching. So we are caching a ton in this application. Everywhere we can cache something, we do this. And what we found really helpful was in Laravel, you have this parallel testing facade which you can use, and you have specific hooks where you can hook into parallel testing. And this is the setup test case hook which we used. You get provided a token, which is a unique key for the current testing process. And then what we did do is every time we tried to, were looking for a specific tenant, we made sure that in Redis, everything that was cached had a specific prefix, and this way we could fix a ton of issues like this. Of course, there's so much more that I can tell you about the issues that we ran into, but we don't have that much time. But to be fair, we also had to do this quite a bit. If it's parallel testing, we are skipping the test because there were, I think, around 20 tests where we had just no idea why it was failing. And we need to come back to those, but in order to have me here on stage talking about, and we really wanted the test suite to be working, we had to skip a bunch of them. Okay, this means after 1.5 years, after 99 commits, after 90 files changed, we finally merged parallel testing into application, and we are now down to 5 minutes for our test suite. Which is the first time you see your whole test suite running without any issues. It's the best feeling, I can tell you. So for 1.5 years, we were seeing issues coming here, there, but the first time you see this, this is really beautiful. So locally, this takes 3 to 5 minutes now, which is just amazing after all the hard work. We currently have a solution where we can finally run this again. So we made big progress with this journey, but this is not yet over. There are still some things that we need to deal with. First, when I say 5 minutes, this means locally on this MacBook Pro with 10 cores, because this means 10 tests can run at the same time. If you try to run this on a normal GitHub runner, where you only have 2 cores, this is not so fast. So this means we're currently looking at solutions where you can use bigger runners for GitHub Actions, and we're currently down to 6 or 7 minutes for our whole test suite, which is something that we can live with, but we also have to figure out if the extra costs are worth it, so we're still figuring this out. Then I told you about our prepare command, which we were running before running our test. By the way, we had to completely rewrite this in order to make this work for our multi-tenancy parallel testing setup. We want to include this now, so this means that we can just we want to run the test suite, and then it will automatically check, are there new migrations, are there new seeders? If yes, then we're going to run the whole migration process. If not, we're just moving on and running the test. So this is something that we still have on our list to make it a little bit simpler. Also pretty cool in Laravel, who does know the PHP artisan dump schema command? Okay, quite a lot, this is good. So what this does is you can run it against the current migrations you have in your application, and it will create this SQL file with just the schema of those migrations. And when you have something like 660 migrations, you can think it will be way faster to just import the SQL file than just going through all those migrations. We haven't figured out yet to get this running. We're still working on this, so I hope I can share this with you on Twitter as well when we get this done. But I really hope that this will also improve our migration process a lot. All right, so managing a test suite with more than 5,000 tests efficiently. What can you take away? What have I learned? I think still the most important fact here is write tests. No matter how big or small your application is, but especially the bigger it gets, the more people work on, the longer you want to have this application, write as many tests as possible. You can still deal with slow tests later, but writing tests later after maybe a year, you're probably not going to do. So please write tests. Take a look at the setup method, a setup process of your test. This is, again, the biggest bottleneck. Where and how are migrations being run? Which database are you using? Of course, check out parallel testing. It's just so cool and helped us a ton out here. But also don't forget about the single tests, because the next tests that we are going to write, we really want to make sure they are fast, because it's way easier to make them now fast than after 1.5 years, where you really have to dig into the application and try to figure out what is going on. And then also try to recheck the performance of your test from time to time to see what's going on. All right, so this was our little journey together. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. And now I release you to your next little journey, which is lunch. Thank you very much. How did you came from this door?
I know you, man. I know the. So I got a couple of questions.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good.
Are they good?
Yeah, but yeah.
Are they good?
Yeah.
So, first question is from Roberto. He's asking, can you make it faster?
Yeah, for sure.
What's the idea? Getting faster.
Get more cores. And yeah, take a look at the single test as well. So these are basically the two things that we now can do. But our current goal is to not get faster, but don't get slower.
That's a good point. This one is tough.
Anonymous user?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Are you ready? I'm nervous just to ask this.
Oh.
So Casper is asking, what's your thought about the Liverpool game yesterday?
Bye.
Christoph Rumpel, thank you. Are you okay?
Was this enough of an answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
enough of an answer. Because I call you in again because I have it from the anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So the anonymous user asked, can you still do a handstand? Photographer, please. Have your machines
Do I have
ready?
to?
If you, do you want to? Do you do it for me?
I can try.
Thank you.
Oh, God.
Do you need help? No pressure. That's it. Thank you again. A big applause for Christoph.